almost all these systems, there's always a case where you're taking a big piece of sensitive information and you're collapsing it into some small secret. From here, you always have two choices. You're always, and you need to defend both, but the attacker gets to choose. So every tree will always take a split here, and I'm just going to go down one of the paths that's usually the most forgotten one. So usually people will then go off and they'll work and they'll try to defend attack on the keys. But what you have to remember is that the attacker's goal is not to beat your protection system. The attacker's goal is to steal my car. And so you have to always keep your eye on that. So they're going to forget about the keys and they're going to go hotwire the car. But hey, I installed an alarm. Well, here's an example of as I move down through the tree, as opposed to just saying, give me more protection, at each step, I can assess what it's going to cost me to get a particular level of protection in the system. In this case, I bought something, they can ignore the alarm. That's my level of protection within the system for that level of cost. But I'm going to go a little bit further.
So that's intrusion detection.
Yes.
We can choose to listen to the alarms, or we can choose to, oh, it's probably nothing to worry about. And the system administrator can check off and not worry about it.
Yep.
Okay.
From here, I'd say, well, that's not acceptable to me. I'm going to hire a guard. I know what a guard costs. I can price that out. And what do I get for that? Well, attacker always wins. So they're going to disable the guard. Kind of knock them out. Cool. Well, I'm smarter than the attacker, of course. So I'm going to place guards inside and outside of the garage. I'm going to give them radios. When the first guy gets knocked out, he can radio the other guy, say he's coming. All figured out. Well, too bad. Attacker always wins. The interesting thing about these trees is that usually as you work your way down them, you get to some point where magic occurs. And so you usually know that's far enough. I'm going to stop there because no reasonable countermeasure is going to be applied here. But what's important is that you do always end with what we call a residual vulnerability in the system. And in fact, as you do this through a big tree, what you'll find is that there's many residual vulnerabilities left in a system. But the important thing here is that now I can go to somebody, I can add up all my countermeasures and what their costs are, and I can say, here's what you get. You get a system that has these vulnerabilities left in it, and this is what it costs you. If you would like different vulnerabilities, I can tell you what that costs. And so you're able to illuminate those design trade-offs. And in fact, sometimes what happens is you'll look at the particular design of the system, it'll illuminate design issues to you as you work yourself down the tree. And you might be able to cut off complete branches because of something you did that you didn't realize had such a security vulnerability set to it. The other kind is attack trees. So same example, you move down, and the difference in attack trees is that now you have a design. You have a particular protection system. You have it designed out and in front of you. And now you're going to assess it for understanding how the exploiter is going to behave. The reason we did this, at least in our field, and it applies in your field as well, is that the exploiter would always stick up their hand and say, I wouldn't do that. That's not what I would do next. I'm smarter than that. And so you need to really have some model of how the exploiter is going to behave. So in this case, you install the alarm system. The exploiter has several choices. They're going to either ignore the alarm and drive away with your car. They're going to trip the alarm and run away. Or they're going to outmaneuver you by tripping the alarm, using it to their advantage, running in your house and going grabbing those keys. So this, what it does is it illuminates the decision process of the exploiter and allows you then to go to this independent assessment of exploiters and say, well, what would you do? And then it allows you then to design the system accordingly, or make decisions in your design accordingly. It's particularly appropriate for misdirection. I'll talk about misdirection a little bit later. Most powerful tool that you got in your bag of tricks, also the most dangerous. So that's why we, in particular, we use this kind of methodology for misdirection, because misdirection, you always want to understand what the exploiter is going to do, because you're making, whenever you perform or apply some level of misdirection, you're making assumptions about the attacker, and they may be completely false, and if they are, you're doomed. And so that's why we do it. In this case, You're going to park a decoy on the street. First case, they see the decoy, they steal the decoy, and off they go. And they're happy. And it's great. And it worked. And so that's a case where misdirection is very effective. Next case is they recognize it, they ignore it, and they move straight into the house anyways and go steal your car. That's a case where you essentially paid for something that had no effect.
Scott, could the decoy be like a honey pot?
Yes.
Okay.
The third case is the most dangerous case of any form of misdirection, and that's where they recognize your decoy, and it draws the interest. It draws greater interest. They go back and they say, this is a terrible example, but they go back and they say, wow, they're decoying me. I thought I was just stealing a Toyota. But apparently, if they're going to go all the work of deploying a decoy, there must be something way better inside this garage, right? So now they go back and get organized. Now, that was the last thing you want to do to your attacker. So, just to review it, the biggest thing to remember, countermeasure is the designer's perspective. It's always completely comprehensive. You don't have to have a particular design. You're going to lay it out, and then you're going to make choices. You're going to work with your customer, the system, the person you're designing for, and you're going to make those cost-benefit trades, and it's going to get you out of this, give me more, I gave you more, it cost too much for what I got. You get to avoid all of that. The good thing is they are very big, but they can be reused. A lot of these systems, from my laptop to a missile, break down to a microprocessor, some non-volatile memory, some volatile memory, and some kind of network channel from that microprocessor to something else. That part of the countermeasure tree can be reused again and again and again. Attack trees always represent the exploiter's perspective. Because there are decision points within an attack tree, well, I could do this and I may do that. Attack trees, if you tried to make them for every possible permutation, would be enormous. And so you don't do that. You do attack trees when you really want to understand what's the attacker going to do in this case. Does my countermeasure that I applied make sense? And you're supposed to principally use these with attackers and get their feedback. The other lesson learned is what to really care about. I guess is the way of saying it. In the anti-tamper field, as we were starting out, as a completely new field, we were coming up with countermeasures, and every time we came up with a countermeasure, an exploiter, these communities within the military turned out to be very close, would say, well, I can defeat that with this theoretical magic wand I have. And you always had to take them at their word because they could show evidence that they could break other things. And so we got caught in a game of capabilities. And unfortunately, as we've said, or I said many times, the attacker is always going to win this game. So go on here. This was the hardest chart in the deck to make for me, mainly because everything I know about capabilities are classified. But I think this room is pretty savvy and knows essentially anything that's produced in software can be beaten. I hope you know that. You should believe that because it is absolutely and 100% true. The best software coding capabilities do not exist within this country. They exist elsewhere. And so that where the best designers are, so are the best reverse engineers. Any hardware can actually be defeated as well. It's just a matter of time, cost, skill. Eventually, all hardware is composed of atoms. We can now take apart atom by atom by atom anything we want, and we can understand how it's reconstructed and put back together. There's just no way to defeat that. The tools that are available to people have become widespread. The most powerful tools that used to at one time only exist within the U.S. are now broadly available everywhere. Largely, principally, and now when I was talking about tools here, generally speaking about hardware tools and tools for integrated circuits, mainly because our capability to produce integrated circuits within the United States has all moved offshore. And so the largest foundries are now all exist in other countries. And essentially all the tools that are available for reverse engineering all come from failure analysis tools. So what happens is, in this